Imagine an animal so vast. It was less a creature and more a walking ecosystem. Its shadow darkened the prehistoric plains. Its footsteps were seismic events, and its mere passage could alter the landscape itself. This was not a beast of mythology, but a living, breathing reality for the largest land animal ever to have walked the earth. Argentinosaurus, huinculensis. Its fossilized remains are more than just colossal bones. They are clues to a life lived on an unimaginable scale. In this documentary, we will piece together that life, from its accidental discovery in the Patagonian desert to the incredible biological engineering required for its survival. If you are fascinated by these true chronicles of the ancient world, consider subscribing for more journeys like this one. Now, let's journey back in time and uncover the story of a lost world. Our story does not begin in the age of dinosaurs, but in 1987, on the sun-scorched plains of Patagonia, Argentina. This land, today a vast, wind-swept desert of rock and scrub, holds deep secrets of a much greener, more vibrant past. It was here that a local rancher named Guillermo Heredia, while tending his flock, stumbled upon something extraordinary. Protruding from the arid soil was what he initially mistook for a massive piece of petrified wood, a common sight in the region. But the sheer scale and unusual shape of this object sparked his curiosity. What he had found was no tree trunk. It was a bone larger than himself. Realizing the significance of his find, Heredia contacted paleontologists. The call was answered by the renowned Argentine paleontologist José F. Bonaparte, who, along with his colleague Rodolfo Coria, led a team to the site near the town of Plaza Huinco. What they began to unearth was staggering. The initial log was a tibia, a shin bone measuring a colossal one, 55 meters, or just over 5 feet, in length. But this was only the beginning. As the excavation continued, the team uncovered more pieces of a gigantic puzzle. Yet, it was a puzzle with most of its pieces missing. The fossil record of Argentinosaurus is famously, and frustratingly, incomplete. The team recovered a series of enormous dorsal vertebrae from the back, several massive ribs, parts of the sacrum where the hips attached, and that one colossal tibia. In total, we have less than 10% of the animal's skeleton. So, how do we reconstruct a creature of such legendary proportions from such scant evidence? This is where the true detective work of paleontology begins. The most telling clues came from the vertebrae. Each one was a monolithic structure of bone, standing over 1.5 meters tall as a person. When we analyze their internal structure, we find they are not solid bone. They are riddled with complex cavities and hollows, known as pleurocoels. These were not signs of weakness. They were a marvel of biological engineering. These hollows connected to a sophisticated system of air sacs, similar to those found in modern birds, which invaded the bone to reduce its weight without compromising its strength. This adaptation was crucial for an animal pushing the absolute limits of size. With these giant, yet relatively lightweight, vertebrae and the massive tibia, scientists could begin to sketch the outline of the animal. They turned to the principle of comparative anatomy. By studying the more complete skeletons of related, albeit smaller, titanosaurs like Saltosaurus and Repetosaurus, they could use the known proportions of these cousins as a blueprint. They could calculate, based on the size of the Argentinosaurus tibia, how long its entire leg likely was. They could estimate the length of the spine based on the dimensions of the vertebrae and the spacing seen in its relatives. Slowly, painstakingly, a ghostly image of the Colossus began to emerge. It was an animal with a torso so immense it could have filled a room, supported by 4 pillar-like legs. The reconstruction was, and remains, a process of careful scientific inference, a hypothesis built from a few titanic fragments. From one man's accidental discovery, science was resurrecting the ghost of a giant, a creature whose very existence challenged our understanding of what was possible for life on land. The next question was even more profound. What kind of world could possibly create and sustain such a being? The bones of Argentinosaurus, unearthed from the dry, dusty earth of modern Patagonia, are a passport to a lost world. To truly comprehend this creature, we must immerse ourselves in the environment that sculpted it, a world operating on a scale of immense vitality. Let us travel back 95 million years to the Cenomanian stage of the late Cretaceous. The continents were not as we know them. The great southern supercontinent of Gondwana was in its final stages of fracturing, and for long periods, South America was effectively an island continent. This isolation created a unique evolutionary laboratory, a crucible where life, particularly the sauropods, could reach unparalleled dimensions. The world of Argentinosaurus was a greenhouse world, bathed in a warmth and humidity far exceeding our own. Forget the arid, windswept badlands of today. Imagine instead a vast, waterlogged landscape of immense floodplains. A network of powerful, braided rivers snaked across the land, carrying nutrient-rich sediment from the young Andes Mountains to the west. The air itself would have felt heavy, thick with moisture that beaded on the skin of any living thing, fueling a flora that was both alien and vaguely familiar. This was a world without a single blade of grass. The forest floor and open prairies were instead dominated by a sea of ferns and cycads, some growing to the size of small trees. Above them, the canopy was not a dense, closed jungle, but an open woodland of colossal conifers, ancient relatives of the modern araucaria, or monkey puzzle tree. These were not soft, leafy trees. They were titans, armed with tough, needle-like leaves and bark like armor. This vegetation presented a challenge. It was fibrous, abrasive, and less nutritious than modern foliage, requiring a digestive system of incredible size and efficiency to process. This supercharged environment was the engine room that powered the age of Titans. The combination of high temperatures, abundant water, and atmospheric carbon dioxide levels far greater than today's created a planetary garden of explosive plant growth. The sheer biomass of vegetation was staggering, providing a near-limitless source of low-quality fuel for any creature with the anatomical tools to consume and process it on an industrial scale. But Argentinosaurus was not just a passive resident of this global hothouse. It was an active and essential architect of its environment. We can rightly call it a keystone species, or an ecosystem engineer, on a scale never seen before or since. A great herd moving through the landscape was a fundamental force of nature. Their immense weight compacted the soil, and their constant passage would have carved continent-spanning migration routes through the woodlands. By browsing on the towering conifers, they would have opened the canopy, allowing precious sunlight to reach the forest floor, spurring the growth of the ferns and cycads that fed smaller herbivores. Furthermore, their immense output of dung would have been a critical part of the nutrient cycle, creating patches of extreme fertility that supported entire communities of insects, fungi, and the small animals that fed on them. They were the beating heart and the circulatory system of this entire ecosystem, living gardeners of a continental landscape. The soundscape of this world would have been one of deep, resonant frequencies, the low, rumbling calls of the herd echoing for miles, the thunderous crash of a toppled tree, the constant hum of ancient insects. It was a world of immense life and immense energy. But this vibrant, thriving world was no peaceful paradise. It was a realm governed by the unforgiving laws of survival, a place where a life of such magnitude required an equally magnificent biological design, not only to function, but to defend itself against the titanic predators that evolved in its shadow. To exist at the scale of Argentinosaurus is to be in a constant, intimate battle with the laws of physics. Every function, from taking a single step to drawing a breath, presented a monumental challenge that required radical evolutionary solutions. When we analyze its anatomy from the few clues we have, we are not just looking at an animal. We are reverse engineering a machine that appears, at first glance, to be impossible. Its body was a cascade of brilliant solutions to the paradoxes of extreme size. The most fundamental paradox was supporting its colossal weight. The foundation of this solution was its skeleton, a masterpiece of strength and weight saving. As we saw from the vertebrae, the bones of its spine were not solid pillars. They were heavily pneumatized, meaning they were intricately hollowed out by a complex system of air sacs, creating a structure that was both incredibly strong and surprisingly light, much like the trusses of a modern bridge. A solid spine of this size would have been too heavy for the animal's own muscles to lift. This pneumatization was also the key to solving another critical problem: respiration. These air sacs were part of a hyper-efficient, bird-like respiratory system. Unlike mammals, who breathe in and out in a tidal flow, this system allowed air to move in one continuous loop through the lungs. This unidirectional airflow meant that with every inhalation, the lungs were filled with fresh, highly oxygenated air, maximizing oxygen absorption. For an animal with a windpipe many meters long, this was essential to overcome the problem of dead air that would have been left in the throat after each breath. It was a respiratory engine perfectly tuned to fuel a body the size of a small building. Supporting this immense torso were four colossal, pillar-like legs, positioned directly beneath the body like the columns of a cathedral. The forces acting on these limbs were astronomical. We can infer from trackways of related titanosaurs that its feet were likely broad and cushioned with a thick, fleshy pad, acting as a natural shock absorber and distributing its immense pressure, perhaps 80 to 100 tons, to avoid sinking into the soft, damp earth of the Cretaceous floodplains. Speed was a luxury it could not afford. Its locomotion was a slow, deliberate, and thunderous affair, likely progressing at no more than 8 kilometers, or 5 miles, per hour. Each step was an act of immense energy conservation. One of the longest-running debates in paleontology surrounds the sauropod neck. For decades, we imagined them holding their necks high like graceful, reptilian giraffes. However, biomechanical studies reveal this would have created the single greatest plumbing problem in the history of life on Earth. To pump blood to a brain so high above the heart would require blood pressure so extreme it would have destroyed the circulatory system. Instead, the evidence points to Argentinosaurus holding its neck more horizontally, using it as a vast feeding boom. Standing in one place, it could sweep its head across a huge arc of vegetation, efficiently stripping ferns and conifer branches with its simple, peg-like teeth. There was no chewing. The tough vegetation was swallowed whole, destined for a gigantic, fermenting gut and a muscular gizzard filled with stomach stones, or gastroliths, which ground the plant matter down. This leads us to the greatest mysteries of all: its internal machinery. The heart must have been an incredible engine. Estimates suggest it could have been the size of a small car, beating with immense force to circulate thousands of liters of blood. And was it warm-blooded or cold-blooded? The answer is likely neither. Argentinosaurus was probably a gigantotherm. Its sheer volume meant it generated a tremendous amount of internal heat from digestion and muscle movement. Its primary thermal challenge wouldn't be staying warm, but shedding excess heat to avoid literally cooking itself from the inside out. Its body was a living furnace, an integrated system of radical adaptations, engineered to solve problems that no other land animal has ever faced. The life of an Argentinosaurus was a relentless quest for energy. Every day, from sunrise to sunset, it was driven by a singular, overwhelming imperative: to eat. An adult would have needed to consume hundreds of kilograms of tough vegetation daily, a task that required near-constant browsing. We imagine them moving in great, slow-motion herds across the plains, their long necks methodically sweeping through the fern prairies and conifer woodlands. This herd was its fortress. While a lone adult was a formidable sight, their true defensive power came from their numbers. The ground would have trembled under their combined weight, a moving mountain range of flesh that would have deterred all but the most determined predators. But this near invincibility was earned, not given. The life of an Argentinosaurus began in extreme vulnerability. Like all sauropods, they hatched from eggs. The mother would likely have laid dozens of eggs in vast, communal nesting grounds, then left them to their fate. The hatchlings that emerged were tiny miniatures of their parents, perhaps only a few meters long and weighing as much as a large dog. In a world of giants, they were bite-sized prey for a host of smaller carnivores. Their first and only defense was to grow, and to do so at a biological pace that almost defies belief, potentially gaining kilograms of weight every single day. The journey from hatchling to Titan was the most dangerous race in the Cretaceous, and there were giants hunting in this world, too. The same ecosystem that could support the largest herbivore of all time also gave rise to one of its most terrifying predators. This was the kingdom of Mapusaurus rosae, a member of the Carcharodontosauridae, or shark-toothed lizards. Mapusaurus was a theropod that rivaled T. Rex in size. But its most fearsome trait was not its size, but its strategy. The discovery of multiple Mapusaurus skeletons in a single bone bed is powerful evidence that these carnivores hunted in coordinated, multi-generational packs. A single Mapusaurus would have been little more than a nuisance to a 90-ton adult Argentinosaurus. But a pack of 7 or more, working in concert, was a different proposition entirely. We can envision the terrible drama unfolding on the plains. The pack would not risk a direct assault on the dominant adults in the center of the herd. Instead, they would harass the edges, testing the defenses, looking for a target they could manage. A juvenile, a subadult, or an old, weakened individual. Their strategy was one of lethal precision. Using their speed and agility, they would dart in, using their serrated, blade-like teeth to inflict deep, grievous wounds on the victim's legs and flanks, then retreat before the Titan could retaliate with a crushing stomp or a sweep of its colossal tail. This was not a quick battle, but a grueling war of attrition. The pack would methodically wound their target, causing massive blood loss and exhaustion, separating it from the protection of the herd. The very size of the Argentinosaurus was both its greatest defense and a critical weakness. Its movements were slow, its turning radius enormous. This deadly dance was the ultimate expression of a prehistoric arms race. The immense size of sauropods, like Argentinosaurus, was an evolutionary response to predation, pressure, while the pack-hunting behavior of Mapusaurus was a direct counter-adaptation. A strategy evolved to tackle the impossible. From a single, man-sized bone found by chance in the Patagonian desert, we have journeyed back through the depths of time to reconstruct the life of Argentinosaurus. We have seen it not as a collection of fossils, but as a living, breathing ecosystem unto itself, a creature that existed at the very edge of biological possibility. This titan forces us to reconsider the limits of life on land, a walking testament to an ancient world where the scale of existence was almost beyond our modern comprehension. Its reign has long since ended, and the world that forged it is gone. But its legacy is a profound reminder of the incredible, diverse, and often awe-inspiring paths that evolution can take. The full story of Argentinosaurus is still being written, with ongoing debates about its incredible biology. Of all the mysteries surrounding this giant, from its car-sized heart to its epic battles with pack-hunting predators, which do you find most fascinating? Let us know in the comments below. To ensure you don't miss any chronicles of the ancient rulers, make sure you've subscribed and turned on the notification bell